We're so excited. This is our second panel. This was really a collaboration between the staff and the library, the YMCA before. It was just absolutely fantastic. So we're excited for you all to do this again. I think now more than ever because of diversity, equity, and inclusion being pulled. I think we have to stand even stronger. So my hope is that everybody who hears and listens will actually understand some of the issues, things that are coming up, not only in kind of the community, but also politically. I think that's important to talk about. So we were excited to have Stephanie again. She was a fan favorite. Everybody was so excited. So we're so thrilled. Wait till you hear her. You'll be just blown away. Our panelists are awesome, and this is just, it's going to be a great evening. So thank you so much for doing this. We're really excited.
Awesome. So thank you to Chris and the Peace of Mind Wellness and Counseling Center, the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council, and the Berkeley Heights Library for hosting this important conversation and placing the confidence in this dynamic panel that you'll hear from in just a couple of minutes. So this event demonstrates the commitment that this entire team has to dismantling oppression, breaking down barriers, and elevating the education that people have around really important topics that sometimes seem like they are taboo topics. They really aren't, right? They're just topics. So we will get into some things this evening. Just to give you an idea of what the format of the event is going to be, we will do some brief introductions across the panel. We'll spend about 50 minutes on the Q&A, and then we'll transition to Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions, write them down, put them in your phone, hold on to them, and then as soon as we wrap up, then we'll take questions from the group. I will go last. I'm going to start to my left with Quasan.
Hello everyone, my name is Quasan Hunter-Redmond. I'm a social worker, I'm a poet, a writer, an author, and I am an LGBTQIA+ advocate to dismantle the stereotypes and the bias about my community and my people.
Annie.
Hi everyone, my name is Annie Zenn. I'm a licensed professional counselor and clinical supervisor out in Oregon, so representing the West Coast today. And I'm also on the board of directors for Oregon SAGE, which is a nationwide advocacy group for queer mental health and queer clinicians. So this is a topic I feel really passionate about. I also work and live in a rural part of Oregon, so kind of recognizing that there's some differences, especially for queer folks that live outside of cities and some of the challenges that they face. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you all for being here, and this is a topic I'm really passionate about. So,
thank you.
I'm Thomas. Unlike everyone else here, I have no credentials to back myself up. The only thing I do have is personal experience. I'm transgender and bisexual, so everything that I'm saying doesn't come from looking them up. It comes from a personal experience of mine. So
That's an adequate credential.
that's true.
Josie.
My name is Josie. I'm the Operations and Community Development Coordinator for Peace of Mind. Outside of Peace of Mind, I'm also a dance educator and choreographer. And queer rights and queer advocacy is something that's become extremely important to me, specifically in the past 10 years. So I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with everybody today.
Great. And I'm Stephanie. I am a strategist, a communicator, an educator. I'm on this panel because I was honored to be invited to return, but really I'm here because I have a personal responsibility to use my power and my privilege to stand up for, to stand with, to stand behind and have the back of people who are marginalized, who I feel like there's something that I can do here to be of great support. So I'm here for that. I've already said the conversation that we're having tonight is a very important one, having this public forum and bringing people into the discussion so that you can then go out and hopefully be advocates, at least be more educated than you were about some of the topics than when you came in is really our goal. So with that, we'll get started. All right, so The term intersectionality was coined in 1989 by scholar and civil rights advocate Kimberly Crenshaw. So the term describes how race, class, and gender, along with other individual characteristics, intersect to an overlap within an individual. So I'm going to open this up to everyone. Answer as you feel comfortable. As you reflect on your personal experience, what has been your journey to discover and embrace your identity? And if you're comfortable, share how your intersectional identity shapes your experience as a member of the LGBTQIA 2S plus community. Anyone can start. Or I'm going to pick. Josie.
Oh, okay. So personally, my journey to discovering my personal identity happened a little bit later than I didn't really experience it so much in like my childhood and adolescence. It was more of like a young adulthood experience for me. And I think that probably partially comes from, I didn't really have so much representation of queer women growing up so much. So I think a lot of the stories that I heard, a lot of what I understood didn't come from the part of me, like the woman identity of me. So I learned that a little bit later. You have the inklings growing up a little bit here and there. I think, but for me, it was really like this conversation I had with myself, probably like 23 years old, where I really sat down, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, how long are you gonna hide this from you? And from there, it kind of, I remember waking up the day after I like really listened to me and feeling like 12,000 pounds off my shoulders and being ready to experience the world in a completely different point of view. So that's a little bit about like my personal journey. I think the minute that I felt really comfortable to start sharing this part of me, I realized that it was something that I wanted like my life to really be dedicated to. So I think for me it's really cool because I didn't know if I would ever get to this point where I would feel so accepting of myself, let alone not being afraid of the people around me and how they felt, and being willing to kind of like dedicate a lot of personal and professional work to this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go.
Okay, so my personal identity as far as my sexuality is concerned, I would say that a lot of it was very much so not liking myself due to what other people projected upon me. And I lived in East Orange, New Jersey, so it's a lot of gay bashing or hate towards the LGBTQ community. And even if you were, you better not speak a word unless it's your sister or a cousin or your best friend. Don't let it be a mom, your aunt, or your grandmother or your grandfather. It's something totally different. For me, it was more so, I always knew I was gay. Like at a very young age, from the things that I wanted to do. The girls are playing jump rope. Oh, I want to play jump rope. Oh no, you can't play jump rope. Play with the boys. I don't want to play with the boys. Like, they play too rough, or it's more fun doing this. So it's like a lot of things that I liked, it was being taken away from me, or I was trained to think that the things that I liked wasn't for me, or I shouldn't be engaged in it. So therefore, all of the things that I did like, I was taught not to like, so I would do things that wasn't me. So now I would get a girlfriend, or I like her, not knowing why I liked her. She was just pretty, I guess, or she was funny. But the boys, like, he was funny too, he was attractive, but no one understood that. So you have yourself with these boys that have this privilege about themselves because they're straight. And it's like kings who have these kingdoms that they don't even know that they have this privilege. And where you have me, where I'm in a corner just hiding who I am. It was pretty rough. So once I got to college, I started to become myself. I started to meet more people like me, where I felt comfortable with, but not too comfortable. Once I became an adult, actually, and started living on my own and meeting guys, I became more into myself. And my aunt's like, baby, we knew already. Like, just tell us. And then, like, I also feel as though with the intersectionality, with me being gay, black, male, and around the boys I had to be her, and around the girls I could just be myself. It was pretty rough until I had to learn to love myself again. So you have to undo everything that society has taught you to love yourself, be who you are, and just love yourself wholeheartedly. And I feel like that was like so much of the struggle. And as the person I am today, where I worked at a school and you see the football coaches telling the boys, man up. No, if it hurt, it hurt. If you're sad, you're sad. Or even grown men to this day, like they'll confide in me as an LGBTQIA plus guy. And it's like one of those things where it's beautiful. If you're hurt, if this woman hurt you, you're hurt. You can't sit and say, oh, I'm a man, I'm tough, I'm sure. No, pain is pain. You cut me, I'm going to cry. I'm going to tell you, it hurts. So now I just love myself. I tell people to love everybody else, and I'm just humanistic, and that's just it,
Okay, I'm next. For my personal identity, I realized I was trans when I was very young. I was, I think, like 12 years old. So circa 2016, which is right before Trump got elected the first time. I found out through Dr. Phil, believe it or not, which is a funny story. But by having that like social media aspect and having a very supportive family, I felt comfortable enough to explore that immediately after realizing. So rather than feeling shunned away from it or like something that had to be hidden away, I was able to express it fully because of the people in my life. So because of that, I was able to kind of skip steps and kind of get to where I am now faster than most people like me would have. And because of that, I'm very privileged in that way, especially as like a very pale white guy. Like I very much have privileges that work in my favor when it comes to who I am today for that.
Yeah. I did not realize until I was an adult in college. I was raised in a very religious family where half my family was Catholic and half my family was evangelical. So you kind of got both ends of the spectrum. And I remember when Ellen came out, Ellen was no longer allowed in the house, and there were just very strong messages in my family that it was not okay, that this was something to hide or be shameful about. And then it wasn't until I got to college that I started being exposed to more people and kind of more terminology, and finally finding language that I didn't have access to before. I think that's really important, just that we have all this terminology to find things that mirror our experiences, because it was such an isolating feeling before to feel like I was the only one feeling this way. And so in college, I was really able to find this new part of me. But then after college, I got a job in a very rural, conservative town. And luckily, because of my white privilege and passing privilege, which is another thing in the queer community, I was able to kind of go back into the closet and hide that part of myself, which was really, really damaging, because I had already discovered this part of myself, and then it felt like if I showed this part of myself, I risked losing my job, and it was really, really harmful to my mental health. And so being able to get out of that toxic work environment, I was able to start a private practice, and my entire website is covered in rainbows now, and I love it. And so for me, it's really, I really love working with people on, their journey, because everyone's journey is very different.
So did you want to
I just wanted to add something to what you said.
Yeah.
I think that's so important that we identify who we are in the workplace as well. I remember being a TA, and it's like I'm working with teenagers who, if they find out I'm gay, what does that mean? What will that look like? Will they tell their parents, oh, I have a gay teacher? Or, if they're fighting and if you grab a kid, oh, he touched me, and it's how would that be interpreted? But I love how you said there are rainbows everywhere now. I've even gotten to a point where I'm just I have to encourage these kids to be themselves, because just like you said, it came to a point where you had to go into the closet, come back out, and I feel like we get to a certain age, like even from like a small age where like we're really young, we can't be who we are. We don't have that much time in our lifespan as it is. So once you get to your like mid-20s, it's like, oh, now I can be free. But you have so many good memories as kids that like you can be who you are, and that is so liberating for parents who accept their kids for who they are. But I just love that now. You know, in the workplace, I'm like, girl, all the time. Like, and it just feels good, like, you know, being yourself. So I like that.
So before I ask the next question, I'd like to share a few statistics from the Trevor Project. 39% of LGBTQ plus people ages 13 to 24 seriously considered death by suicide in the past year. This is from a study that was conducted in 2024. This includes 46% of transgender and non-binary young people. LGBTQ plus youth of color reported higher rates than their white peers. 50% of LGBTQ plus young people who wanted mental health care in the past year were not able to get it. The top 3 reasons cited were: I was afraid to talk about my mental health concerns with someone, I could not afford it, and I did not want to have to get my parent or caregiver's permission. And the third statistic is 90% of LGBTQ plus youth said their well-being was negatively impacted due to recent politics. So this next question I will pose to Thomas, and then Annie or Quasan. If you'd like to chime in, that'd be great. Why is mental health care crucial for LGBTQIA2S plus youth, and how does it support well-being?
Again, as a transgender person, my mental health is very severely affected by it. Especially when I first came out, I was still in middle school, and I was in a semi-Republican area where it's like half people are very accepting of it, half people are not. And so as I was trying to figure out my identity in a very supportive household, I felt as though I couldn't really come out like that in school. And it was very damaging to my mental health, and knowing that I had people in the corner was very helpful and stuff, but I couldn't imagine having to go through that without any kind of support. And I went to therapy and stuff, which was very helpful in learning to regulate my feelings and like figure out what I could do to help myself and become better. But like that only can happen if you seek it out and if you have people who will help you get there. So mental health is very important to better your livelihood, you know?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have another statistic to add. After the most recent election, the Trevor Project saw a 700% increase in crisis calls. So when we're thinking about the political situation right now, I mean, especially trans and non-binary youth in particular are being targeted by these politicians. So we have some of the most vulnerable people in our society, and especially when you think about trans and non-binary youth of color or youth with disabilities, even more so. And so that's that intersectionality piece. And a lot of youth don't have access to queer affirming care, right? Or they don't have access to support people who believe that about their own identities, call them by the correct name, use the correct pronouns, or they're in a school where that's not allowed, that's not supported. And so having access to queer affirming mental health is literally life-saving, and having access to gender affirming care is life-saving for trans and non-binary youth. So yeah, it's something I get heated about. It's so important to protect trans kids, and having mental health care is one of the ways that we provide support to some of the most vulnerable.
Thank you for making such a clear and emphatic statement. I think it is very much needed, right? There is no gray area around this.
Right.
Thank you for that.
I had wrote something the other day, so it's a poet. Her name is Whitney. I forgot her last name, but she say in English we say, but in poetry we say this. So in English, I'd say, and then I realized that I cannot break generational curses if I am still seeking approval from the generation that is cursed. But in poetry, I'll say, and then it struck me How can I shatter the chains of the past while still begging those bound by them to bless my freedom? So in other words, I'm going to say that with mental health is taboo to the older generation sometimes. So if I was feeling away, to say for example, I was like, oh, Mom, I'm feeling depressed. Oh, you better go depress those dishes, or you better go, like, one of those situations where mental health is not really important to them. So therefore, when it comes to me being sad, like, they can't understand my struggle. So I say that to say to our youth, it's very important for them to have those mental health, that be accessible to mental health care providers and things like that, because killing yourself, suicide, it's you haven't even lived. You probably haven't even made it out your state, made it out of the country. You just met this small group of people who are criticizing you and making you feel a certain way. You know, it's like, encourage people to get through what they're going through at that time. And like, it's just tough. It definitely is. So mental health is very important for those kids.
I'll say, I think one thing that came out of the pandemic that has been a positive is people's comfort. And clearly not everyone, right? But that there is a greater degree of comfort with people being able to speak openly about dealing with mental health challenges and seeking therapy and being in therapy and just being open to even conversations with peers and with friends about challenges where years ago people probably would have just and have just dealt with that on their own or not at all because of fear of the stigma attached to managing mental health issues. So pandemic certainly put us all through it, but there are definitely some silver linings as well. So I think Annie mentioned gender affirming care, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. Thomas, would you mind talking about it a bit?
So gender affirming care looks different depending on what you want. Again, as someone who came out very young, when it was still kind of getting to the point where it is now, you had to go through a lot more hoops, especially as someone who transitioned before I turned 18. I had to go to a lot of therapists and a lot of doctors and stuff to essentially be like, this is what I want, and I don't really want to change my mind about it. And some doctors were like, no, you're going to change your mind. Some doctors agree that I was going to stay this way, but because I went through those hoops, it took a little bit longer. I also went to, like, there's surgeons you have to go to depending on what kind of transition you want to do. I ended up getting top surgery, so I had to go see, like, a plastic surgeon to see what they could do for that. If you want to take hormones, there's many different ways you can go. Like, I went to an endocrinologist. You can also just go to your private care physician. It really truly depends on what is affordable to you and how big of a support system you have.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything?
I just want to clarify, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what gender affirming care is. Gender affirming care can just be using pronouns that are different than the pronouns you were assigned at birth, going by a different name than the one that might be on your birth certificate. And gender affirming care is a wide range of different types of medical care that cisgender or non-trans people get every single day. So all we're doing is we're using the same type of medical care that we give cisgender people to trans people to save their lives, and we're calling it gender affirming care. But I think there's a lot of hate groups right now that are using that term to instill fear, and it's really none of their business. It's between the individual and their medical provider. If they're a minor, then they may have parental conversations as well, but it's a deeply personal decision that, frankly, the government has no business being a part of. So I just want to clarify that, it can look a lot of different ways.
Good, thanks. So as we look at the past 50 years, there have been historic moments of activism and resilience within the U.S. In the community. So from Stonewall riots to political leadership of Harvey Milk, to AIDS activism, marriage equality movements, youth advocacy, and even drag culture, as evidenced by RuPaul's Drag Race and Drag Queen Story Hour. Can we talk a bit about sort of how businesses and organizations can show up authentically beyond Pride Month to build solidarity and advocate and advance systemic change, right? It is at an individual level that change occurs, but that also has to be balanced with structured communication, structured activity at an organizational level and a business level. And so, Josie, is that something that you can talk a bit about?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it, right? It's February, it's not Pride Month, like we're here, you've got 4 queer people on the panel here to talk about their experiences. It's like, it's very, very straightforward about what we can do. I think, I was writing a lot of notes about this, and I was thinking about, like, we talk about specifics, right? You're thinking about, like, a retail corporation, like, you're highlighting very gender-inclusive body types in your advertising all the time, and not just in June, right? We're talking about if you're doing any sort of LGBTQ+ campaigning, like, you're hiring queer people to be in front and behind the camera all the time. But when you really think about it, for me, it's, like, not running away when things get really tough, like right now. Right, so it's like we've got all these policies being stripped, we've got the T being erased from LGBTQ+, like all of these things are happening and everybody's very slowly bowing out. And for me, it's like, if you stand with your roots planted in the ground like a tree, you're doing the work. And I read about an organization. There was a fair and they were doing a fundraiser for an organization that supports trans people. And they provided free, like 8 LGBTQ+ couples got married for free. And it was all to raise money. They were like, come get gay married. And people showed up, and it was like, because it cost like $150, I think, to get married, and they raised enough money that the 8 couples that showed up to get married got to completely for free. And it was in response to everything that's happening right now. So to me, I'm like, that's clear organizational business allyship. This panel, clear organizational allyship. It's like, I think standing in front, behind, and beside people, like, and it's in the question, right? It's in the question beyond Pride Month, right? And it's not pink washing. It's not using queer people for, like, to boost your sales in any capacity. It's like, it's doing the work because you want to at the core of what your organization stands for.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I piggyback off of something that you said? I do agree. I feel like, especially during Pride Month, it's like stores that really don't support us. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, it's rainbows everywhere. It's like, even during Pride Month, we went to DC. Now, it's this club that we went to before. It was like, I guess during the summertime one time, and it was like, cover charge was $20. Now it's Pride, it's $50. It's like, what are you doing? Like, why is it that much? Or when you go and you see like a flag at the front of the store, it's like, you don't normally do this. Like, if we're welcomed here, we're welcome. Look at us as all people and not, this is the gay, this is the straight month, or this is this month. So we have to just do it as an advertisement versus just doing it for like a humanistic point of view, So, yeah.
Yeah, I think with any allyship, the work starts within, so within the individual, but then also within the organization. That work has to come within first, right? And so, do your employees feel safe? Where are you, getting your merchandise from? Are you supporting queer businesses, right? Do you have gender neutral bathrooms? Like, are you respecting your employees' pronouns and teaching your employees why it's important to then be respecting the consumers' pronouns or your customers' pronouns, right? And so I also want to acknowledge too that, if you look at queer rights movement, the reason why the queer rights movement started was because of Black and brown queer people. And that is such an important part of history that a lot of times gets erased. And so also knowing that, like, all of these identities are connected, right? And so that's also really important. So, I mean, it's Black History Month right now, right? And so there's a lot of like Black queer leaders that can also be celebrate it, right? And so I think just, educating ourselves to be able to then like spread that information to others.
Thank you for that. So as you think through some of the comments that were just made about representation, representation deeply influences how people see themselves. They influence societal attitudes, it influences policy changes, and oftentimes the representation comes through the lens of people who are not members of those communities, which distorts the actual representation. So what are your thoughts on LGBTQ representation in traditional and new media, as well as politics and everyday life? I think I can figure out the politics, right? We've made enough comments, but more comments are always welcome. So anyone, that's open for anyone. I said anyone.
I think about, when I shared earlier about my journey of self-discovery, so to speak, I mentioned not feeling like I felt particularly like represented in what I saw in front of me. And now part of that was also, I think, like the part of me that did know, like hiding it from myself because of like the fear of what it would bring out. But I think as I've grown into the person that I am, you realize that like everybody really does look for themselves, somehow. And I was like, I really never saw myself until like a certain point when there was more representation, specifically in like media. But I do think when we talk about representation, it's like it's really a small part of like a larger step towards equity. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of queer stories that are maybe written by not queer people, and representation as like a tokenism sort of thing versus what it actually should be, which is like reflective of real life. So I think that's something we've made. I'd say we definitely have made strides in the fact that we're seeing more queer writers and things like that. We're speaking media particularly. But I do think we still, like, you get stuck with certain tropes, and it's, and then we talk like politically also. And it's just, I don't know, I think I'm looking for more authentic representation still. Like, I think even it's acknowledging that we've made significant strides, and it's like I'm ready for it to really come from a real place of not being just trying to put like a number on the board, check a box.
I would agree. I feel like as far as the media, it's bad for me. Like, even watching maybe Instagram or Twitter, it's like, oh, all the gays are in Atlanta. Every time you click on a video, somebody's fighting, or somebody's like beating the brakes off somebody because they stole somebody's man or they looked at them funny. Or even in movies, for example, every gay character, oh, at the end he got AIDS, oh, so unpredictable. Like, that's just not something that should be happening. Or even nowadays, in every TV show, it has to be one gay character, so that way it can pertain to the gay audience, you know?
Yep.
Or if it's like a lesbian couple, she's hiding, she got a man on the side, or those things are happening. And I just don't think that it's like authentic. Like, even, for example, when you watch like artists back in the day, let's say like Luther Vandross, like, it was never really those type of like, oh, I'm gay, I'm here, I'm out this, he did what he did, showed his vocal cords, you know, made what he did, and it was over. That was it, you know? I feel like even being gay, it's like sometimes we look at it as like, my sexuality has to become my personality, and that's not it. Like, it's just horrible, you know, media-wise. I feel like we could do a better job with representation.
I apologize for clapping, but
yeah, I think if we look at the queer rights movement, it's actually one of the fastest in terms of changing community and, you know, nationwide approval. And so when we look at like how the overall majority of Americans view queer rights has changed dramatically, especially compared to other like civil rights movements. But within that, there's still all of the other isms that we're dealing with, right? And so I think that when we look at queer representation, there's still a lot of fat phobia, there's a lot of white supremacy, there's a lot of kind of male dominated, right? You have the skinny white gay friend who's kind of the side character, right? But we're not seeing the diversity within the queer community, and I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about the queer community is that there is every body type, there is every skin color. I mean, queer people are everywhere, right? There's no corner of the earth you can go where there's not queer people. And on one hand, that has helped us gain like approval and gain civil rights. But on the other hand, like we're still in the US, we're still in this system that, you know, a lot of those experiences are still not represented. So while it's definitely gotten better since the 90s, we still have a long way to go.
Way to go. Thomas.
Just that stereotypes is still a very big thing in media, and a lot of people, whether it's true or not, rely on social media to understand their viewpoints on other people. So if you constantly just have characters who only rely on like one-note stereotypes, it does nothing but perpetuate ideas of who we are as people, when that's not the case at all.
Not one-dimensional, right? Not one-dimensional, not a monolith. Just like any other marginalized community, right? Showing up in very different ways, and each composite, each individual deserving the respect and the space to show up as your full selves. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. So switching gears just a bit. So I think it's fair to say that in many countries, including in the U.S., the LGBTQIA plus community is challenged to overcome significant barriers. We've talked about several already this evening, including the lack of legal protections from discrimination, criminalization of identities, restrictions on marriage and parental rights, threats to housing and financial security, as well as some of the mental health concerns that we spoke about earlier. So I'm going to open this question up again to anyone. How can people be better allies to the LGBTQIA plus community to help ensure greater equity, acceptance, and inclusion? Anyone? I'm not going to look at anyone.
I can start. Understanding that, again, we're not all the same is very important. Like, everyone has their own personal experiences, and because we have our own personal experiences, some of us may need certain aids more than others. So, like, again, I'm very privileged. I have a very privileged family and stuff like that, so I don't need as much aid and support as someone else might need. And so, instead of using my experiences and then applying it to everyone else, you ask them up front, like, oh, how can I help you as a person?
So treat them like a human being.
Yeah, essentially, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Heard.
You can go.
I think that education comes within, right? So you have to do your personal work first, maybe examining, you know, if there are any bias, right? We're all humans, we all have implicit bias, and so understanding what maybe some of your bias or assumptions are around gender and sexuality, where your growth and learning opportunities, right? The internet is a wonderful thing. You can learn a lot of stuff there. And so educating yourself and then using that knowledge to challenge homophobic and transphobic comments, jokes, right? When other people are saying ignorant things, how can you show up in those conversations and saying, oh, actually, you know what? I just learned that's not actually how it is, right? And so having those personal one-on-one conversations is how you use your privilege to change public opinion and voting with your dollar, right? If these corporations are doing ignorant, hateful stuff or supporting hateful groups, right? You don't have to shop there. There's so many other options, right? So using your dollar to really show your support and supporting queer-owned businesses.
I agree. With having education and having that knowledge to put it into those things, like, for example, hierarchies as well. For example, I've been in spaces where gay men thought that they were better than trans men, or they felt as though oh, they would go for me before they go for the trans man. And I'm like, that is unacceptable. Or in a room full of heterosexual men, me being like the minority in a room, it's like, oh yeah, we definitely better than him, or those types of things. You can't think like that. Also, it was one more thing that you said that I'm like, you know what, go girl. Like, I can't really think of it right now, but I just feel like just viewing people as people, like, and cutting out the hierarchy. That's just basically it, but it's gonna come to me.
Yeah.
I feel really lucky. I have really, for somebody who spent a really long time determining whether or not it felt safe to come out, I have really fantastic people in my life, like really beautiful allies, like masterclass in allyship. And I really, I think for me, what has always made me feel really held was like an understanding and a willingness to accept feedback if something doesn't like feel good. Like, and I think also like doing the work when nobody's looking. Like not being in the room and it's still happening. Like that to me has always felt like real, true allyship. And I think it's just, you know, piggybacking off of Thomas a little bit, everybody's so different, so everybody needs different things, and like being open and listening to what the person in front of you really is looking for and the support that you could provide to them. And I feel like the people who are in my life and who have shown up for me as I've navigated this, like really held my hand in the way that I needed them to. And I wouldn't be on a panel if I didn't have them, and I wouldn't be like leading the affinity group that the studio has like without it. Like I think about myself 5 years ago and I'm like, I did a lot myself and I had people behind me.
Excellent. What advice would any of you give to someone who is struggling with their identity or with coming out?
It's better on the other side. It's so much better on the other side. You you can get there. Find the people who are going to help you get there. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I don't really have a better way kind of to describe that.
I think that loving yourself, you know, when you love yourself, you'll get to a place where nothing matters. Because honestly, it really does not matter. Like, I feel like me being at my big grown age right now, I can walk into a room and you may look at me funny, or I don't even notice that you're even looking at me sometimes. So for me, it's like me being myself means everything to me, because people actually really don't care. And if they do care, you got some work to do on yourself. And you have to constantly work on yourself, you know? You can't wake up one morning and it's going to be like, oh, I don't care what people say. You can say that as much as you want to, but it will show. People will read the room. You really have to get to a point where I can't describe it for you. Like, I just know I love myself now. And I see people here, they love themselves. You would not be on this panel right now if you didn't love yourself. Like I always tell kids all the time, you will reach a point in your life where none of this will matter. And if you don't love yourself, I love you. And that's all I tell them. I'm like, just do it. Be who you are. Do it from the heart. That's it. And it's going to get easier, you know? It will. And everyone is a living testament as of right now, standing on this panel. It's going to get easier. I promise you. I remember being young saying, oh my God, I'm never going to come out the closet, or I'm going to be this way forever, or I'm never going to find somebody to love me. People already loved me. People already loved me, so just be yourself. You'll get to that point someday. Don't rush it. It's an experience. Enjoy the journey. You'll get there when you get there.
Yeah, I would say welcome. The questioning is such an important part of the journey. It's something that I think every queer person I've ever talked to goes through this questioning process. And so if you're asking questions, you're already exactly where you need to be. I think finding community and support is so important, and trusted, healthy, queer affirming support, right? I think that unfortunately there are groups throughout the country who are spewing very hateful messages. There are people in the mental health world who are still doing conversion therapy. It's something that's legal in every single state in this country, and it's horrendous and very, very traumatizing to queer and trans folks. And so I would say, if you're asking these questions, find queer affirming support that can help you ask the right questions about yourself, and so that you can get to that place that you truly know yourself, and you can kind of learn these different terms and learn, what feels most authentic to you, because that's the process, right?
Absolutely. Good, thank you.
For me, I would just say trying it out because, you may believe, as you start trying to figure out what you identify as and who you may be in this world, things change, and you may feel one way one time, but as time goes on, you may realize another identity may suit you better. So learning to express all of it and to try it out and to not hold yourself down to one solid identity, especially as you're growing and as you're changing, is very important.
Are any of you in a position to answer a question around who, either in your personal lives or who in the outside world, was either an inspiration or an anchor for you during the phase of your journey where you were in a questioning period, where you were wondering, how do I talk myself through this? How do I talk to other people about this? Anyone want to share who, I guess maybe not who specifically, but unless you're comfortable with that, but what that relationship was, or the inspiration or an anchor?
I can go first. Mine aren't queer people because I don't know as much queer people when I first started. A lot of mine was family support. I have my aunt here, I have I have my mom and stuff, and even though they're not a part of the community, they know people in the community, and because of that, they were able to kind of guide me down what would be best. So just support doesn't always have to be someone in the community itself, as long as it's someone who's willing to advocate for you and be the kind of placeholder as you try to figure out other things, Mm-hmm. If I didn't have that support, I would spend so much time trying to figure it out myself that I wouldn't be able to be going to school and stuff and doing the things I want to do in life,
I think, I had a couple of cousins. So my cousin Naja, my cousin Kalila, my sister Naima. But it was so many, with my sister and my cousin, because they were straight, they didn't really understand it. It's just be who you are, it's okay, you got this, but it wasn't enough because I think with my cousin, because she identifies as a lesbian, it's all with her. She I don't care, but around our family is we gotta kinda care, if we want to survive, come on, pull it together. But and my friends too, my best friend, at that time we knew what we were. We didn't really know how to identify as those things within ourselves, but I felt it was pretty much trauma bonding. We knew that we were different. We spoke about those things. My cousin said that she was trying to be funny, going talking about something. Oh, that's a nice glittery shirt you got on, and it's what she was trying to say, those types of things. So it was funny, but I think within that it's an experience within itself because it makes you stronger, But that was my support system.
Yeah, I think for me, I couldn't even begin to name all the people. It was such a long process for me, and it looked so different, and it wasn't just the people I knew personally who were supporting me, but also being exposed to other queer people's stories, even if I didn't know them personally, kind of hearing these reflections mirrored back at me. And what we know, what the research states is having access to queer and trans affirming spaces is what lowers suicide rates for queer and trans youth. And that was, that was my experience as well, of just having access to spaces where I could be myself and I could express or, have different relationships was such a blessing to me. And that's the reason why I am here today. And it was, so community, right? It's all about where you're at, and unfortunately there's so many places in this country where it's just not safe and it's not affirming, and and that's the work that all of us are trying to do here now.
Absolutely, community building is what is going to get us through.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm thinking to myself, when Annie introduced herself, I had a moment. I was like, universal experience here. I get it. Because I also I had my moment of peeking out of the closet, and it was October of 2016. So then November comes around, bad things happen. We dip back in. We close the doors. Stay just a little bit longer down here. But the first person I came out to was actually my college roommate, who was incredibly held a lot of really beautiful space for me when I really there was nobody. I didn't really feel ready in any other capacity, but my best friend sitting in the front row, she has held a tremendous amount of space for me, and I think that even as I've kind of navigated moving through this, she's gonna make me emotional, I'm looking at her. She's really been present for me as I've navigated going from the closest people to me knowing, and that feeling really great, to expanding beyond, and instead of going raising my ally flag in the spaces that I have felt weren't ready for me to not be an ally, to transition out of that and placing myself in the narrative. So that's been a gift.
So awesome. So awesome. I'll make this the last question. What is a common misconception about your identity that you would like to clarify for people?
Because I am gay, I do not like every man in the world. You could be straight, you can have the most masculine posture, you can have the deepest voice. I'm not attracted to you. I don't want you to think that I want your man, because I don't. And I just feel every gay man is not extra feminine or extra messy, or I don't know. I'm not a threat to you. I'm not a threat to your masculinity. I just want you to know that. Another thing that I want people to know too is, especially the young kids, be mindful of the older gays sometimes. I've heard so many stories of boys growing up saying, my godfather or my fake uncle, he took me in and, he started to groom me after a while. It's one of those situations where I am who I am, I'll keep you a secret and I can show you the ropes, but that's not always good, Be mindful of your safe spaces, even within your family, just look out for yourself and be safe.
Mine is I'm just trying to do the things I do every day. Obviously, the people like me are very much under attack right now, especially for things like going to the bathroom. I'm not trying to go to the bathroom to do any nefarious activities. I just want to pee. That's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Usually I use the term queer because I love it and how inclusive it is, but another identity I hold is pansexual. So to me that means I'm really attracted to the person and not the genitalia. That's not really a factor for me. And so I think that sometimes there is a misconception that pansexual and bisexual people are more promiscuous than straight, gay, or lesbian people. Not true. I'm in a happy, committed relationship. My girlfriend's in the back row. So I think that is a misconception that is really harmful, right? And that's another thing we can challenge.
Yeah, I think similarly that, just because I'm a woman who's attracted to women, suddenly I'm attracted to every woman. Not Mr. Celia Girl, more of that kind of thing. That and the threat, I think, is a really big like a big one that suddenly like yeah, I just think that it's the way you would treat any person in terms of how they identify and how they approach things like romantically or sexually, like applying it to the to anybody who identifies as queer as well.
All right, so I misled you. I have another question. This question though is that before we open up for Q&A from the audience, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure you say before we get to the Q&A? And I mean, if it comes to you later, that's cool. We'll be here for a bit. That's nice. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was saying I'm all good. I don't have anything.
Actually, I do. It was something that I saw on Instagram the other day, and it was pertaining to our community and having children, and how like someone said, "Oh no, we don't want that right there," but she started listing reasons for why we would be the better parents because these are the children that we're choosing. We're better fit parents because of X, Y, and Z. The love that we do have, we choose our partners, we fight for this. The way that we are in the workplace and how we have to fight for those rights as well. Even me and my husband, we wanted to do like the surrogacy and go through that process. Way too much money. So now we're gonna look into adopting. But I think that it's like the research that goes along with finding good adoption agencies and things of that nature is very hard. And even when you do go sometimes, you get like such a hard pushback or how about we got you do this route, or maybe you might want to do this versus we want to do what we want to do. And this is what we said, you know? So I think that that's a big problem as well, that like it's not really talked about a lot. Or maybe it is and I just don't see it.
Yeah. Well, can I just piggyback off of that real quick? Because I think that there is a lot of straight and cis privilege that often goes unidentified. And so just like popping out, having an accidental child is, you know, like a straight cis privilege. And then, you know, also like we brought up kind of some of the fear tactics used around like thinking that queer people are somehow more predatory or grooming or a danger when the research does not show that at all. You are much safer around a bunch of drag queens than you are in a church, right? So like, you know, making sure that we're recognizing those straight and cis privileges and challenging when people are saying, you know, hateful rhetoric or repeating these things that are often, you know, said, so.
And that's substantiated. Yeah, good. Okay, that was really it. So we are going to transition to open Q&A. So I'll invite anyone in the room to share a question, make a comment. Doesn't have to be a question. Yes, woman in front, Chris.
So, how would you respond?
We'll repeat it.
How would you respond to people who utilize religion and say that you all are horrible and it's against the Bible? How do you respond to that when that is one of the biggest things they will always bring up? Of this is not what God wanted. How do you respond to that? They'll often weaponize that.
We work on Sundays too, don't we? We do all these, like, it's all, there's this scene, I don't know if anybody's watched The West Wing, when a woman is like speaking out specifically against you know, any gay relationship, and the Jen Bartlett, who is the president in the West Wing, goes off on like all the things that are listed in the Bible that we do on a daily basis that so I just don't, at this point, for me, I let it kind of go right over. I think also based on like certain things that I've experienced within my upbringing that have informed how I have felt within like the Catholic Church and things like that. I think that I seek out the spaces that are looking at it through a more progressive lens.
For me, my grandparents are very religious, but in their eyes, like, I was made this way on purpose by God. Like, in their mind, I'm transgender because I'm meant to help both men and women and experience both of those things.
Oh.
And by having that, I can better I'm a psychology major, but I can better my involvement in other areas of life by being that way. So in my mind, using it as like a hateful rhetoric as rather than like an, oh, I'm me purposely spiritually for that reason and I can use it to help others is what I would try and say.
I love that so much. And that mirrors what a lot of indigenous cultures believe about two-spirit people. So I love that you're, yeah. I think for me, it's like, why would you want to worship a God that's so hateful? Like, think about yourself, right? Like, I don't know what you're signing up for, but, you know, like, that's on you. Because last time I checked, your God did not say that, or your Jesus did not say, you know, spew this hate and division. So, you know, I kind of put it back on them because that's between you and your God. That's not between me. So, yeah.
I think my favorite thing is like you read the whole Bible and that's the one thing that you took from it. Like this big book, that's the only thing. And then I go into, is that your grandkid? Is your son married? What age did he lose his virginity? Like it's so many things that we could touch upon, but because it's just the one obvious thing that you said. If you don't get on my face, lady, go shopping. Like, I don't have time for it. I feel like those are small-minded people. Like, religion is something to put in place for order, you know? And I just feel like if that's what your perception, I can read a book and say, the lion stole the apples. When it's like the lion saved the baby, the lion did all of these other things, but all I'm saying is just the lion stole the apples. I can't pay attention to it. I can't.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Any advice for leading difficult conversations with just like about these topics? I guess any like really great resources because it's so wonderful that we're all able to be in this room tonight. But you know, there's a lot of people that need to hear this that aren't showing up to this space. So just like ways to better equip ourselves for those conversations.
Is that for
Anyone. Yeah, anybody that has anything.
I mean, that was such a good question. It's kind of hard to. That was a good question.
I hear this question coming up a lot around like pronouns in particular. I feel like a lot of people kind of fumble around those, or people want to be respectful of pronouns but are so afraid of saying the wrong thing that they end up just like completely avoiding pronouns altogether, right? Or getting really caught up in kind of the logistics of it. And it's like when we can just be okay with making mistakes, like you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. Like we're all learning together, right? You own your mistakes, you do better next time, right? And so when we can, you know, relate these conversations to ourselves too and personal experiences, right? Then that I think also helps kind of bring that human element to the conversations. And you know, one of my favorite lines to use is like, well, you can have a trans kid or you can have a dead kid. Like, let's talk about it. Like, this is why pronouns are important, because they literally save lives, right? And so that tends to change the conversation pretty quickly when people hear that. And it's like, better to try and mess up than not try at all.
Yeah.
I like to piggyback off what you said. For me personally, and I do not want to offend anyone, but be okay with people making mistakes, right? It's kind of like one of those things where like, you ever saw someone had a baby and it's just like, oh, she's so cute. Oh, it's a boy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, he's so cute. For me, I've worked at a school. I still work at a school, and for the life of me, I thought that this girl was a boy, and I'm like, come here. I'm like, he hear me talk to him, and everybody looking like, that's a girl, and I'm like, I am so sorry. Like, that's my genuine mistake. And I feel like with me being gay, it's one of those things where, like, me and my gay friends, we call each other girl all the time. So if someone's like, oh, girl or oh, boy, it doesn't matter. To me, everybody's a girl. Like, it could be like, my brother-in-law one time, I'm like, girl, he just like, what? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but, you know, I don't know. I feel like people genuinely do make those mistakes, but, you know, if someone is doing it intentionally to disrespect you, it's just pure ignorance. But, you know, take it as a grain of salt, you know. But if it's a genuine mistake, it's okay for people to make mistakes, you know.
If I can just chime in, I think libraries and librarians are an excellent place to start in terms of educating ourselves, right? Libraries have millions of books on all of the topics that are in mass media, traditional media, new media, and topics that are in conversations that we're having with our friends, with our cousins, at our kitchen tables, in private discussions, and in the workplace in some spaces. Going to a library, and this is a huge plug just for librarians in general, just for librarians and libraries in general, right? I'm a huge fan. I have my unicorn library card on the back of my phone right now. But I think that there is so much information to be accessed and gained and discussions to be had in spaces like a library, which is open and accessible to any and everyone. And I think people oftentimes look past that and don't take the library as a resource for these kinds of conversations, right? I'm a big advocate and supporter of the Newark Public Library. They have an LGBTQ resource center that has been under construction for over a year, but the library staff, the resources are all still there, and they are incredibly willing and helpful. They want people to come in, they want people to have conversations, they want to direct people to resources, including community resources. So that would probably be my biggest plug around education. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes.
I just have a comment. Like when I come across someone that's so anti-LGBT, it's usually because they turn out to be LGBT themselves, and they're fighting themselves, and they think by hating everyone else, it's like making them look more masculine and more straight, but it's not. If anything, it's making it more obvious sometimes. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so the term for that, internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia, right? Sometimes people hate this part of themselves because they're afraid, right? Oftentimes when I'm working with queer folks that have that, it's because everyone around them has told them that this is bad, this is going to get them ostracized or rejected, right? And so they try to stamp out this part of themselves, but you can't, right? And so, yeah, I go back to that quote, hurt people, right? And if you can't accept this part of yourself, how are you going to accept it in others? Yeah.
Yes.
This is for anybody. It's more out of curiosity. Do you all think that this hateful rhetoric or even acceptance comes from being taught that? Or do you genuinely believe that it's just hate in somebody's heart to feel that way? Like, how do we, because it's too cold. So, like, where do you think that stems from? Is it learned, or is it, like, individual choice? Or, like, and how could us as parents and allies kind of, depending on your answer, if it's a parent teaching that to their family or children, how could we kind of reverse that? Is it by speaking to other parents directly? Like, how can we be a better ally in that way?
Yeah.
I think it's taught, because it's just kind of like one of those things with like love. When you meet different people, like we all have different love languages. If I cook for you, that's me telling you that I love you. Versus somebody buying you gifts, oh, that's my form of loving you. So when you're taught those things, it's kind of like you grow up with, like you said, the rhetoric of just having it there. Because everybody don't hate it, you know? So it has to be something that's taught, in my opinion. And I feel like just being comfortable to talk about it. Like, a lot of people aren't open-minded, or we don't waste our time having those conversations, you know? Because I may not agree with you, but that doesn't mean I don't want to hear it. Like, whatever your opinion is, that's your opinion. But I just feel like with doing research or, you know, having your experiences with people, you can't be closed-minded with things like this, or have conversations with people who are closed-minded, because you're not going to get an outcome at all unless it's just going to be a negative outcome. And if they're fine with it, just let them be. But that's my take on it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of you have spent time around 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, but I've never met a racist, transphobic, homophobic 3-year-old in my life, right? So I definitely think not only is this taught, but I think that there are politicians and powerful people in this country who are using some of the most vulnerable people in our country as pawns for political gain. And when we can recognize why and how trans kids in particular are being used as pawns for political gains, we can start to see kind of the whole system for what it is, right?
I think it's taught, but it's not always an explicit taught. Like, it's not always someone directly being like, oh, that person's gay or that person's trans, don't look at them. It's always kind of like separating them, or like kind of always viewing them as other, whether it's purposeful or not. And so include, like, actively making sure to include people in your kids' lives and stuff. So like as they grow up, they know that these people are there and that they're not going away is very important.
4 for 4, taught. I think a lot about my own experience. I think about like my own personal internalized homophobia that came like probably directly from the Catholic Church. And I think a lot about also the idea, and some people here have heard me talk about this before, but the idea of acceptance and belonging versus tolerance. And I really think that a huge way to kind of combat certain messages coming through is fighting it tenfold with radical belonging and radical acceptance versus teaching tolerance, and because I think that builds a significantly more inclusive and safe space. And like the messages are going to come from all sides, I think, from, you know, the hate's going to be there, but it's like kind of pushing back in the other direction. And those are my thoughts.
Very good. So I have 2 questions. First, my mother is in the back, and she has taught us, Katie and I, my sister is back there, she taught us very subtly to radically accept people as opposed to tolerate. Truly. And Thomas knows too. Mom is just, and this is a big, really, like, you taught us very, very subtly, not overtly, but it was amazing. And I thought, this is what happens, right? If you have a supportive parent who then instills this, maybe it doesn't impact you, but then you will stand behind. And so I will always thank you for this. This is a big deal, really. So just to say that, really. So thank her for, this is why you all are here. Thank Debbie Silvestri right there.
Thanks, Mom.
Debbie Silvestri, yeah, the way to go. So, but I have 2 really different questions. How, first, if somebody, say we were put this on YouTube, we decide, and there's somebody who has been taught this their whole life, but they're like, you know what, I really want to change. What is one thing you would want them to know so bad, that they had this hateful rhetoric in their lives their whole life, but they want to shift? What would you say to them? So that's one question. And second, what would you say to people that are trying to navigate life with this political climate now? So they're 2 very different questions, but I think it will be really interesting.
I can answer question 1. Actually get to know people who are part of that community. obviously, like, you, as much media as you can consume, it's always going to have like a layer of like, oh, this is what I'm trying to put out into the world, and it's always going to heavily rely on their identity as a queer person. But as you actually get to know people, you get to learn past the queer identity, and by learning past the queer identity, you learn more that people are people, not just their identity as a queer person.
First, do your research. One. That's me. I'll do my research before I go ask a question or go cook something or whatever the case may be, but definitely do your research. Two, experience the person, because every gay person is not the same. Maybe you might want to get to know somebody who is somewhat your speed or not as verbal or whatever the case. Start small. Don't just go throw yourself at a gay bar and just like, oh my God. You know? Like, make a friend. What was the second part of the question?
What would you say to someone who's trying to navigate all of this in the political climate we have right now?
It's hard, you know, because everybody has such a political opinion to the point where, to me, I just can't listen to it personally. That's me. But I can't really answer that question for you. I just don't listen to it. It's hard. It's so hard because you have so many people who hate us and will go to bat for anything that they say against us. Oh, he's a pedophile because he's gay, or oh, because it's like, I don't know. So that question's not for me. I can't really answer it.
I think right now there's a lot of hopelessness in this country with all the political stuff, and I think that a lot of queer people are feeling that powerlessness, and you know, the way that we can kind of bring hope back is to one, community, right? Finding other people who are feeling similar to you and know that you're not alone in this feeling of hopelessness right now. Two, like, what are your values, right? And how can we move through those? How can we live by our values? How can we, you know, advocate for what we value? And then three, like, finding things that are within your control, right? Some days that's just me outside tilling my garden in the middle of January because it's something I can control, right? And, you know, sometimes it is just like the things that we can do here in this moment. My girlfriend and I have been doing a lot of puzzles to stay off of social media. You know, so finding things that are within your control, finding things that you value, and finding your community. And that's the only way we can get through this.
I think to your first point, I think that don't be afraid to be like vulnerable with like what you don't know, if this is like a really brand new space for you. Because you have to start somewhere. So I think that not knowing where to start or feeling like it's like very like naked to go in with absolutely nothing, knowing absolutely nothing, I think to share to like embrace that. And then I think what I would have to say is that you're not alone, like in that, because I think they win if we feel isolated. So I think kind of finding the way to remind yourself that even the times that feel like the most, you feel like the most in like in your head, in your like not in your body as but really that you can, like, there are people. You're not by yourself in this.
One other thing I would add is this is tied to knowing your values and getting back to your values, is identifying the things that are most important to you and focusing on those, because there are so many distractions, right? Like, there's something that's happening here that everyone is making a big deal about, and it really is not that important because it is a distraction, and what's over here is a right that's being stripped away, right? What's over here is some illegal activity that's happening that no one is checking, right? So it is being very focused on what is important to me and where can I put my energy, whatever energy I can sort of gather up because I can't get distracted with all the other stuff, right? There's too much that's happening, like every single day, every 4 hours, something is going down. And then you wake up the next morning and it's like, oh, wait, this was going on at the same time? Because nobody was talking about this, right?
Mom had a question.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. At times I've been to many stores and I see a woman or a man, and they'll have he, she, and when I want to ask a question, I'll say, hi, how you doing? Would you help me? Because I don't want to be I don't want to disrespect the person, because we all have feelings, you know, and so, I mean, because it's okay if I say, hi, how you doing? Would you help me? But they have their name tag on, like it could be Pat, it'll have he, she, so, I mean, am I doing that right?
Trying to understand the
the
pronouns
because,
and trying to understand the application and the referring to someone using their pronouns, doing that appropriately. Yeah.
Because I'm of that age. I mean, I'm not young like you guys. You know, and because it comes natural to you, but I'm like, I don't care who you are. If you're not to me, it's all good.
I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Of course.
The fact that you're aware and you're taking notice, that right there is a win. Like, that right there is exactly what we're talking about on this panel. And that the fact that you're asking yourself these questions about how can I treat this person like a person, how can I be respectful, that's exactly what we want. That is trans affirming, queer affirming, right? And so typically, to kind of go back to your question, typically if somebody says he/she, they're saying that they're okay with either. So you're not going wrong either way if you refer to them with he or she pronouns. So you're doing it right, right? And when in doubt, we can ask, we can use their name, we can use something neutral like they, them, right? But yeah, I love that you're noticing that.
I agree, but in my experience, I typically say the opposite to, acknowledge, the difference. So if it's a guy wearing a he, she, I say, hey, like she asked for it, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, they, them, what's that?
Yeah, but somebody.
Anybody want to talk?
That's not my alley. I'm just.
Oh, I love pronouns. I love it. Yeah, so that's it's a singular they them, and so for example, somebody delivered the mail, but I don't know who delivered the mail, right? I'm gonna say like, oh yeah, they delivered it. Right? So you're using the same thing because you don't know the gender of the male person, right? And so that's the same as someone who is gender neutral, so they're not identifying, masculine or feminine, and so it's really, and this can also be like people who are gender fluid. There's a lot of other people that fall into the they, them category, but basically, male pronouns and female pronouns don't feel good to them, so they, them. And so you would use it the same way as if you didn't know who that person was. So they really like the color pink, right? I'm friends with them in that kind of way. So, yeah.
Any additional feedback? Any comments? Any questions?
Don't be afraid, guys. We don't bite.
Maybe.
I think I have hope for this younger generation. I know not 100%, but I think that this younger generation is a lot more accepting. I see it firsthand, and I know I'm in the best school in the city that I'm in, but kids are much more accepting. They don't care as much as people of a certain age, and that I'm not specifying that age. We're just so much more open. I can remember I had a student one year who identified as trans, and I was under the impression that they were being made fun of, and I lost my mind on this other kid. And he was like, whoa, I don't have any problem with them. Like, I love them. Do you need, literally, he said, do you need me to someone up because of the value? And I was like, no, I'm sorry. But, like, so I just think kids they're a lot more open-minded. And I hope that even through this political arena that we're in right now, they can push through and fight through it, and we can come out in a better, more understanding, accepting place.
Hope so. They will. They will. These kids nowadays, they're fearless.
They are.
They are very fearless. Oh, I'm gonna quit my job because I'm gonna be an influencer. I would never have done that. I'm gonna quit my job and what, dude? These kids, they're very resilient, and like when it comes to sexuality, they don't see it. They will tell you, I'm X, Y, and Z. This one, they will tell me things that I don't even know about my own community.
Our kids are good.
They are.
We are in the same.
But I think that really is a testament to you, every person on the panel, feeling comfortable being able to tell their stories and share how we can help one another. So I think as long as you guys continue to do that and we continue to listen and want to learn, then I believe that will happen. So really, thank you guys.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, and it just shows how important representation is, right? Because growing up in the 90s, I didn't have access to a lot of representation, so how would I know to use these words for myself, right? Versus now there's a lot more representation, for better or worse, right? And kids are having these conversations and they are finding things out about themselves way earlier than was, even possible. It's kind of mind-blowing in the experience that I grew up in, right? And I'm so grateful to that. And yeah, it's really amazing.
That's, yeah. So I think we're going to close out here. I'm going to transition back to Chris to wrap up.
So I know the library closes at 9 and we have to go very quickly, but this was amazing. I learned so much even myself. It was just incredible. My hope is that everyone is going to see each other in the room and know this is a support, this is my community. My other hope is that when we do go to Pride, in June, which we're really excited about, we will be getting a float, and we hope that you all would want to join us, and because this is our community. But this is our community now, and I think it can just self-sustain over and over again. Like you said, if they have community, they'll be okay, and so my hope was that. So I thank you all so much. Thank you again, really. This was fantastic.